had a request to go back through the whole thing again, so.
We're done with you. No, Commissioner Cox has.
It may be something for the budget meeting, but even though Harold didn't want to see it, I'd like to see your future projections to see when do you think, based on what you know, we're gonna have to have another license increase? When you gonna run out of money? Or get down to the 18 million or whatever?
We have that now. I don't have it with me right now, but we've figured that already, so it won't be a problem.
Kind of like Harold, I've seen him, and I'm not sure that you can predict, but.
It's just an indication,
Yeah.
but we can do that.
Okay. Ed, can you give me an idea of 5 years ago, where was the reserve, and right now, where is it? Ken, maybe you could do that.
I'd have to go back.
I just wonder if you might. I
may even have that with me if you want to give me just a second.
You got 20 seconds. Well. Okay, that's fine. Not a problem, I just. Email me or something, just for
I can do that.
personal knowledge. I just like to see how it's fluctuating. Any other questions for Director Carter? Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. I know somebody worked hard on this. I don't know who did that for you. Somebody really, really worked hard. But anyway, you did. I'm serious. You did a good job. Probably the best presentation I've had in the 2.5 years I've had actually all goes. And be sure, Jason, that the commissioners that aren't here get a link to this discussion. I would love to see them get one of these packets in the mail also.
Well, I appreciate your indulgence and do want to thank everybody that worked so hard to put this together. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Director Carter. Madam Chairman.
Great. And there are several follow-ups and questions, and really appreciate Ken. Now, one thing that I know that Director Carter just went through this. Ken, is there anything that you would typically do in a financial report in terms of sharing out of information that we've not hit on this? I just want to make sure the commission has information and we don't skip over that important part of the full commission meeting.
No, I think it's similar as what we've had before.
Okay. And I think that Director Carter walking through it was certainly very helpful. There are a handful of questions I know I kind of jotted down. I may just send you as follow-ups. But if any of you all have questions in follow-up, it's totally appropriate to perhaps send those to the chairman, and he can collect our questions, because again, my imagination tells me that if any one of you has a question, it's shared by several of us, and so we'll all benefit from learning the answer to those questions. So if you have them, perhaps the chairman could collect them, get the answers to those, and then disseminate them to the Budget Committee as well as the full commission. Yes, Commissioner Sanders.
When will we get the more detailed part of this?
Great. So you mean the budget document, the proposed budget document?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm geeking out over the numbers, sorry.
So in my view, beyond hiring the executive director, this is one of our number one jobs. And so it's really important for us to make thoughtful decisions about it. I think it's a great question. We've now moved dangerously close to the absolute first moment they're going to have a budget document for us by changing the Budget Committee to the 14th. And so my question, I guess, is to Director Carter: when can members have a copy of the budget document to review so that they can have an informed discussion, either for the 14th? Obviously, ideally, it'd be preceding the 14th.
We'll absolutely have it by the 14th. But Ken, do you have a better estimate? We'll have to finalize those figures, and
if you all could perhaps, I won't put you on the spot now, if you all would huddle internally and determine what the earliest reasonable moment could be, and I will say to have it preceding that meeting would be very helpful for folks who would like to reflect and sleep on something and look at it. So in an ideal world, it would be preceding the 14th, perhaps even that Friday, if that's possible. But would love for y'all to huddle so we don't put you on the spot, because I don't know that you can answer that right now. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, members? Yes, sir.
Is there any way we can get, I don't want to get down to the penny details of it, but if you could break these, each category out to where you kind of roughly explain what it covers, it just would make more sense to me when I look at the numbers. I don't know, at the risk of saying I want this budget that's that thick, I would really just like a little bit better breakdown of the expenditures, just so I could relate to it.
Right, and Ken, come on up here. And I would say the budget document looks different, significantly different and fuller
Yeah,
than
and
this.
I think what you're
so-
doing is, I'm sorry, I think what you're doing is probably drinking from a fire hose. This is 3 pages of about 50. Because of time, we just did not have enough meaningful time to put together something detailed for you. What we'll have is we'll even have a page of acronyms that might help. We'll have also a sheet in there that will show, if you look down the left side, it says 01. Well, what on earth is that? We'll have a sentence that will explain each one of those, so you can look and get some idea. And the reason that's there is from the hierarchy of the state of Tennessee, this is an applied approach to accounting, budgeting, that sort of thing, as to what those categories are. I think that will help. We'll also have a detail of what is listed as 08 and 13. 08 is professional services that I think you'd ask about, and grants. Each one will be identified on a line. The equipment in the same way. It'll have each piece of equipment that's listed in 716 or 16, which says equipment there. So there'll be a lot more detail in there that I think will help, but probably bring about more questions. That makes sense.
Again, which is totally appropriate, but the budget document is more complete and helpful in terms of the major categories of information. And to Ken's point, it will likely cause you to say, hey, I'd love more information about that. That's a fully appropriate exercise, and one that we want to make sure that you get answers that you have. And to the extent that you develop questions to things preceding the meeting, I think the chairman of the budget committee's goal is to be as efficient and helpful as possible, particularly if you're not on the budget committee. So please share those questions. I would love to be copied on them, just so I can be thinking about what you're thinking about, but certainly the chairman understanding what your questions are, so that as he builds the agenda for that meeting and the agency wants to come prepared, not only to present the budget, but to meet you where you are and get those questions answered either preceding the meeting or during that meeting. And so would really encourage members to feel free to share those questions. If there's something you want a deeper understanding of, it can either be incorporated into that meeting, or the team with the agency and the chairman can walk you through whatever it might be. So I want to really encourage you all to do that. Excellent. Any other, Commissioner Woods?
I don't know which page or how I wound up on this page, but it looks like, between Lifetime Sportsman, Watchable Wildlife, Wildlife Reserves, and Boating Reserves, $65,882,000. At what point do we decide to use part of this lifetime license? I mean, what is there have we set a goal? Once we get it to this level, we are going to start using some of that endowment money for projects, or just for anything?
Great question. Ed, would you come up
Where's
here?
the top at for it?
And at first, I think it's as I understood the answer earlier, the endowment is statutorily mandated. So it's the General Assembly who said this is to be placed aside and held. So that wasn't our goal.
I'm gonna let Ed tell me, because you just big worded me pretty bad.
Okay.
To go to your first question, there is no cutoff at which point we would begin using those funds in the endowment. keep in mind that part of the ones you just talked about is the reserve fund, which is what is left at the end of the year. And we can use that and do every year, is to either take money in or take money out. We also have the ability to move some money out of that, which we've done, to the investment side, so that even when it falls to the 18 million mark, it's the arbitrary number that the commission has put together. At that point, we'll have to decide whether to pull money out of the other investments to put back into the reserve to keep it at 18 million, or to look at some other method of going into those endowment funds, which right now, as the chairman said, would take legislative action. So if it's something we anticipate somewhere down the road that we would do, we might pursue legislation that gives us the authority to do it, but not necessarily dip into them until that time has happened, either some emergency or till we have no funding.
The way that was set up, it was set up where it could not be touched if you do legislation.
That's correct. There's also part of the interest, the lifetime licenses on the kids. It gets dicey when you get into all the inner workings of it. But there's also a difference in the interest on the ones that are sold from the 3 and under from the rest of them. So that interest is accounted for differently.
Commissioner Sanders.
You've said twice arbitrary reserve number. So here's my question to whoever. What should that reserve number be? I know the commission said it, I get that. What do we really think the reserve number should be? I really personally don't like, nobody buys a license for a year because of flooding. That's not gonna happen. So what do we really think we need to have in a reserve?
When the number was said, I said it's arbitrary, just in the fact that it was an agreed upon number.
And I understand.
But at the same time, it was based on, as I remember, 3 months of operating expenses.
Okay, so, okay, thanks.
And so I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Ed, because arbitrary means that it, arbitrary suggests that it was a random number pulled out of the air. And I do recall an extensive exercise that Chairman Cannon went through in that process. And I think Ed's very much outlined kind of the goal for that 18 million. I do think it's an important question. It was one of my follow-up questions, perhaps for Chairman Holbert, about us examining that number and coming to a meeting of the minds that we believe as an agency and as a commission that the number represents a responsible number. I'll confess I've been attempting, and we have a very responsive senator in your neck of the woods who happens to be the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and have been asking him questions about, right now the state's budget, including federal resource, is at $37 billion. They're at just under 800 million in terms of the state resources that they hold on to. And I want to say 43-ish% or 45% of the full 37 billion is represented by state resource. So the question is they've used that standard based on the rating agencies as their AAA, Tennessee's AAA rated. We've got an excellent credit standing nationally. And so if we used a similar standard for this organization, what would the implications be? And so I'm going to probably work with the team here at the agency and with the chairman about understanding how we get, whether it's intentional or arbitrary or whatever, how we get to a number that feels like the responsible number, because I think it'll have implications to Commissioner Wood's question, to Commissioner Cox's questions as well, and I think probably make you feel a little more comfortable that the number's the right number. Does that seem fair?
Obviously did use the wrong language there. I remember once I was asked to give a presentation to the commission, and I went into a lot of detail, and they told me that I certainly won the award for verbosity, and I thought that was really good until I looked it up. So it's kind of the same thing with arbitrary.
I think I might get the same critical feedback for this meeting myself. So any other questions from members?
Let me just say, I know that it was not truly an arbitrary number. I was just trying to get to the number.
To follow up on what you said, I think you're exactly right on what the discussion was, but I also think that remembering what Commissioner Cannon was attempting to do was to give us a goal to, as he quote, live within our means, that this is the bottom line. So we've got to save money or or get some more money. So it was kind of a goal also, I believe.
And it wasn't just 18 million, without going into all the details, there was, which I don't quite remember all of them, but there was a little bit of a sliding scale that we should shoot for around 18, knowing that if X amount of time we would go below it or above it would be okay.
And I'd love for us all to sort of re-examine that and you all come to what you think feels like a reasonable range. I mean, that's an exercise that is a real appropriate thing for us to be thinking about. Okay. I was informed by Commissioner Woods that I would be adjourning before 11:30, so pretty proud of myself, Commissioner. Well, do you have any more questions? Mill about smartly. Hold on one second.
Nicely done.
Thank you, Bill.
I've heard it a bunch. Nicely done.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Okay, unless there is a question or objection.
August 14th at 7:30 a.m.
So I'm gonna ask this question out loud because I thought I asked it before, but my two compadres have both asked the question independently. Ken, would you give the finance report, please? I know I asked you about that and you said that it had been covered, but I would like for you to do that just to make sure that we do that.
When you said covered, I thought you were referencing, is it similar to what we have done in the past?
No,
And it
I
is,
would
but
greatly appreciate it if you
Okay.
would give us the financial report for
I
the
got-
entire commission.
I got through voting, but you want me to start over and go through all of it? Start at voting?
Chairman, do you have a preference?
Okay. All right, should have you're on iPads now? I've got copies if you want to, if you don't, but you can see it on iPad. There should be a 3-page financial report. It's starting at the top of the page is the boating fund. We're approximately 15% less than where we were at this point in time last year. There had been some back and forth between the old contract vendor and the new for the license sales and the boat registrations, and there were some that were delayed in going out. We've made up some of that in June. The thought is that the vast majority will probably be made up by summer. The expense side of boating is approximately 57% of the allotment for the year. By the way, I'm reporting through May, not through June. So this is 11 months of the fiscal year. In the middle of the page, the wildlife fund is approximately 2.1% above the projections for the year. And on the expense side, we're at currently 67%. June is a very large year for expense because we have accruals and that sort of thing. So that will go up, and so will boating's expense go up. At the bottom of the page, the endowment funds, the watchable endowment has $6.4 million. There's $1,100 of interest that is available to transfer for those watchable programs. And the lifetime endowment has a little over $48 million balance through May. At the top of the second page, the acquisition fund, the wetlands acquisition fund, acquiring land has a little over $6.8 million. We've zeroed the maintenance out as we usually do. And the compensation fund, that's the in lieu of tax, has $864,000. We did in May pay those in lieu of tax amounts, and they were a little over $404,000, as I recall, to those counties. On the last page, excuse me, is the now this is through June. I thought I'd give you the most current information I had. This is from the Treasury, very little print, I realize. If you look at the lower left box on the right-hand column, 2 right-hand columns, excuse me, the gain or loss, which is a gain since inception, is $1,580,000, which is 2.4%. For last month, it was basically flat on the earnings. So since inception, we've earned 2.4% interest. Or earnings, it's not interest, earnings value. Are there any questions or comments?
Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Seeing no, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved and seconded, without objection, we're adjourned.